All right, welcome. In this video, we're going to go over some tips for assignment 9, which is strings and vector class. So let's get started. All right, so let's review some things about the string class. The string class uses pound include string. And once you do that, I would recommend using namespace standard. You don't have to, but I would recommend it. It is not part of the standard template library, but there is a string class that has a lot of functions available for you to use to manipulate strings, unlike the way you have to manipulate them in C, the character arrays. Keep in mind, though, that strings are still stored as character arrays. All right, so these are some functions that we're going to possibly be using. So the first one is length or size. So the way that you would do that is you would just say s1.length. Remember to put the parentheses, and if your word is hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then that length is going to be 5. So essentially it's going to return, it's the same thing that the string length function does. It returns the location of the null character, or in other words, tells you how many when you have begun are at the end of your string. You can use s1.size, and that will do the same thing. Another function we'll be using to reverse strings is we're going to be using begin and end. So you have s1.begin and s1.end, and we will be using these functions along with the reverse function to reverse the string, so you don't have to do it the long way as an array. Other things we're going to be using for this assignment are going to be the empty function. So s1.empty can be used to figure out if the string is empty or not, meaning if there are any other characters left in it. And s1.clear will clear out a string. There's a whole bunch of functions, but these are functions that we're going to be using. You can also add characters to strings, and you can add strings to strings. So we're going to be using that as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about getting a phrase. In this, you're going to be getting a phrase. You want to make sure that because phrases contain white space and an enter is a white space, you want to make sure that you ignore any previous returns that could have been stored on the buffer. So right before you put in your get line, I recommend that you use some kind of an ignore to ignore the previous returns. Otherwise, it's going to read that return, and then you're not going to be able to get your phrase. White space is a little bit challenging to manipulate in C and C++, so just that is one quick way to handle that. Also, we'll be using this kind of, in the other assignment, you will recommend to use this get line. This is the C-style get line, or actually the standard IOStream get line, where you have to put, I think you put the name of the string and then you put a size. We're not going to be using that one this time because we don't have to limit our size. We're declaring strings. We're not declaring character arrays. So you can use the get line this way. That way you don't have to limit the size. Remember, in the other assignment, you declared it with a size as a character array because the last assignment was a character array assignment. All right, it's very simple to reverse a word or reverse a phrase. You just take your phrase or your word and you use this reverse function. This reverse function is in this library right here. And you could just go, I want to reverse my word, starting from the beginning and going to the end. There are different ways to reverse it different ways, but for this assignment, we're just going to take the word hello and turn it into backwards hello. So it's very simple and straightforward how to do that. And you can also do that with your phrase. The next thing we're going to be doing is vectors. So the vector is part of a standard template library. Please watch the other video that is in the module 9. I believe it's in the module 9 about standard template videos. And we're going to be using the vector class the vector class is a dynamic array, and we're going to be using two vectors. For part one, we will be using a string vector. And for part two, you're going to change your dynamic array assignment to a vector. So that will be a double vector. All right, so the way you use vector, you have to pound include vector. In this case, we also have to pound include string because we're declaring a vector of strings. So you just put the keyword vector, then you put the data type, and then you put the name. So you can, we're going to do a double vector and a string vector, but you can make you could make your own data type, your own struct, and you could declare a vector of those. So vector has some basic operations. Pushback. Pushback is very important to use pushback as it helps your vector to properly grow. So the point of the vector is that you don't have to say what size it is, and if you need more space, it will grow automatically as long as you push each of your elements one by one onto the vector using the pushback function. The next function so that would be down here. You can see I have my vector. I say pushback, it puts the word hello onto the vector. So if this was my vector and it's a string vector, this is the name of it. This is index 0. It would put the word hello here. Then if I said v dot pushback, happy, then it's going to put happy here. You can see that this is just like a string, an array of strings, only it's a special library that manages growing for you as long as you properly use the pushback. And it has some nice features, like it will return size. I can say v.size, and it's going to tell me that the size is 2. That means the first empty spot. That means that there are 2 strings in there. The popback function, well, if I say v.back, it's going to give me back here the value that is there. So that's going to be a string. So v.back is going to be a string because this is a string vector. v.front would be a string because this is a string vector. If I say v.popback, that means remove the last item in my vector. Pop it off. And then this is going to let me know if my vector is empty or not. In this case, this vector would not be empty because it has one word in it. To loop through a vector, you can use the same kind of loop that you use with an array. The difference is, there's no difference. This size t just means an unsigned integer. You could use int there as well. You can use a ranged-based loop, perfectly fine. Or you can use iterators. This means value at. So I'm going to stick with this because it's very straightforward to me, but any way you want to iterate around your vector is fine. For the part one, I don't think you need to really go through your vector. Oh, you do. You're going to have to go through your vector because you're going to put the words back into another phrase. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to be doing in this next assignment. So in the next assignment, there's a couple of things I want to point out about this function here. You already have your phrase. So let's say your phrase is today is Friday. So this is my phrase. So at the beginning of the assignment, you're going to use this algorithm and you're going to reverse it. But that's really straightforward. It's one simple line to reverse it. But what we want to do is we want to reverse the words. So we want to change this from Friday, today is Friday, to Friday is today. And we're going, and in order, and the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use a vector. We're going to practice by using a vector to do that. So let me just kind of draw a picture of what we're going to do, and then we can talk about these functions. So what you're going to do is you're going to have your phrase. Your phrase is going to be stored as a character array. These are characters. I'm not going to draw all the things, but O, D, A, Y, space, that's a space, is space, Friday. Oops, A, Y, null character. All right, so these are spaces in here. So what we're going, this is your phrase right here. That's the phrase. It's going to come in and it's a string, but it's actually a character array. These are all characters. But because we're using the string class, it has a size. So this function right here, this loop right here is going to start at the beginning and go one by one through each of these up until the end of the phrase. So what you want to do is you want to check if it's a space. So you're going to check your first one, and if it's not a space, right? So if it's not a space, you're going to add it to this word. So if it's not a space, you're going to add it to this word. Then you're going to move on to the next one. If it's, so we have word here. We have your string word. And you're going to say plus equals, or we're going to say when it, like with the first letter, so you have your word here. And you can say word equals word plus phrase of I. So what that's going to do is it's going to take this, our first letter, and word is then going to have a T. And then it's going to move to the next one. It's not a space, it's going to put the O. It's going to go to the next one, D. It's going to go to the next one, A. It's going to the next one, Y. Then it's going to find a space. Now that it's found the space, we have a word. So now our word is today. So we have this word today. The name of the variable is called word. I don't know what it's called in the assignment, doesn't really matter. So it's called word. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our array called words. That's not a very good, let's put a different color here. We're going to take our array words, which is not an array, it's a vector, dot push back. We're going to put that word into our vector. So now our vector, which is here, is going to have the first word in location 0 today. Then you're going to have to clear your word because you put this word today in here, but you want to reuse this string again, so you clear it. So you clear the word, you say word dot clear, and then your word is cleared for the next one. So then you go here, you found the space, you go along until you find a not space, and then you're going to change this from today to is by using this again. It's inside the loop. Then you're going to push back word, so you'll have is here, and then you're going to clear the word, and then you're going to go, you have to go here, you find the space, you find the next not space. Your new word is going to be Friday. Then you're going to push Friday on here. And now you have a vector that has 3 strings all separated, taken out from your phrase. Your phrase has now been separated into 3 different strings that are stored in a vector. So we can go through this one more time. You have your phrase. This is your phrase. I just don't like that I use this word. Let's change this to current. All right. So I have my phrase. My phrase is a character array that's going to say today. I want to do something shorter. This is fun. This space is space fun. Null character. So that's your phrase. And then the goal is that you're going to have your vector. So this is a string. And this is a vector. So you want your vector of type string is going to have, and this is location 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So the size of this, when you say phrase.size, is 11. All right, so you're going to take the first word and put it in your vector at index 0. You're going to take your second word and put it in your vector. So the difference is this is a bunch of characters and this is a vector of strings. You put your next word, which is fun. So now you have your 3 words that are in your vector. And how do you do that? You do that by looping through this one by one. And you have this, I changed it to current. So if you have a letter, you say current plus equals phrase of I. If you're using I for your iterator. And it's going to add the T, then the H, then the I, then the S. And then when it finds a space, it's going to say words dot pushback the current word. And then after you do that, you're going to clear your say current dot clear. And why are you clearing the word? Because it used to have this and now it's going to have is. And if you don't clear it, it's going to, it might not give you the correct, it might not fill properly by putting the null character and everything. All right, so once you do that, then the next step is to reverse your phrase. So like I said, if you want to say today is fun, and again, there might be other ways to do that, but this is on purpose to practice using vectors and vectors of strings. You want to turn it into fun is today. So how do we do that? You pass your vector. So you pass the vector over here, it'll make a copy. So again, on purpose, this is making a copy of your vector. So we're putting, this is your vector. We're passing our vector, which is separated into strings like this. And we want to turn it into one phrase that is backwards. So you're going to pass and make a copy of your vector of strings. And then when you're done, you're going to return a string. So you declare a string in here and you're going to loop through the vector as long as this is looping through the vector, as long as there are still words in the vector. So let's go through what we're going to be doing. I'll do it on the next slide because it's easier to do it like that. Okay, so here, today, this is my vector, is fun. So this is my vector. My vector, the name of my vector is reverse words. It made a copy when the function was called. Okay, so my test here is that it's not empty. It is not empty. So what do I want to do? I want my phrase, so this is my phrase, which is empty right now. I want my phrase equals, or you can say plus equals my reverse. I'm going to just call this reverse because it's too long. I'll just call it rev. Okay, so my phrase plus equals rev dot back. So what does that do? Well, here's my phrase. Oh, you got to make sure you put that. Here's my phrase. So my phrase was empty, and now my phrase is going to take the last word off of here. This last word, that's what back means. It says, give me the last word that's on my vector. So it's going to take that and add it. This is plus equals, right? So the phrase started out empty, and now it has that word. Then I'm going to say phrase plus equals space, because I want to put a space here. Then the next thing I need to do is I need to remove that word from my vector. So I just say reverse dot pop back. So don't confuse back with pop back. Back is actually a string. It's going to give you the string. Pop back is going to remove it. And this is inside of a loop. So I'm going to go back up and check. Oh, it's not empty yet. So I'm going to take the next word off of the back and put it here. Oops, I didn't pop it off yet. Then I'm going to add a space, and then I'm going to pop it off. I'm going to loop back to check again. Take this last word. It's still going to be the back because it's the only word, but it's the back. So it's going to put this in my phrase. I don't really need to add a space, but adding a space isn't going to do anything. And then I pop this off, and now my condition is going to become false because it's going to become empty, and then I return the phrase. So I want you to just understand the concept of what's happening, and we will be working on this together in the lab. All right, now these last two slides are just some help for part 2. For part 2, you're going to change your array assignment to a vector. So everywhere that you had you're using your array, it's going to be a vector of doubles instead. So the first thing I wanted to point out is, of course, you're going to have to include vector. The second thing is in your function in which you're filling the vector, you're still going to connect ahead of time, and you're still going to have a count. The reason you have a count is because that you ask the user how many, not because you need to keep track of how many are in your vector. So you're going to loop through, and you can't just read from the file directly into your vector because it won't grow properly. So you need to have a current double that's going to store the number that's read in, and then you just use the pushback function to push it onto your vector. So if they say 20, this number will get reused each time, and then 20 numbers will get pushed back onto your vector, and then your vector will be size 20. And then we're also going to use sort. So you are going to sort. This is not sorting a doubles, but this is the same concept. You are going to have a vector of doubles, obviously, that you're going to fill from the file, and you're going to practice the sort. You need to #include algorithm. And just like you can reverse with the strings, you can sort with a vector. You just start at the beginning and at the end, and it should put all of the numbers in order. The difference is that you can't just see out a vector of doubles. You do need to write a loop in order to print out all of the vectors in all of the doubles that are in your vector. So hopefully this helps you out to work on this assignment, and we will be working on the code together in the lab on Friday.